Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to wait just a minute to let some others join, and then we'll begin today's discussion. Again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our latest installment of the Hunt Institute and digiLEARN webinar. Today's conversation is focused on using digiLEARN's micro-credentials, quality assurance standards, and rubric for teacher effectiveness. My name is Jalil Hart, and I have the pleasure and privilege of serving as the Deputy Director of the K-12 team here at the Hunt Institute. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Institute, we were founded by four-term North Carolina Governor Jim Hunt and serve as a resource expert for policymakers on education issues across the education spectrum through in-person and virtual convenings, research, and other forms of technical assistance. Before getting the conversation started, I want to provide a brief logistical overview. We'll start with the discussion with about 30 minutes of moderated discussion with our panelists, and then we'll pivot into a Q&A session with the audience. If you have any questions throughout the discussion, please feel free to submit those using the Q&A feature on the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll do our best to address all of them during the discussion. Additionally, we'll record this session and in the next couple of days, post it to our YouTube channel. We do encourage you to join us on Twitter, where you can participate in the conversation by following both the Hunt Institute and digiLEARN. And speaking of today's conversation, we're so appreciative of the panelists who are joining us today. Today's conversation will unveil the micro-credentials partnerships of states' newly developed rubric, the quality assurance standards for micro-credentials, as a tool for maintaining quality assurance and standards across state lines. The panel will explore how micro-credentials can be used as a personalized approach to educator professional development and how education leaders can navigate the implementation of micro-credentials in education ecosystems. So to that end, I am pleased to introduce our moderator, Tom Vander Ark, who's the CEO and partner at Getting Smart. Tom is a longstanding partner of the Institute and a friend of Governor Hunt, having been an integral part of the Institute when it was founded in 2001. So thank you for that, Tom. And with that, the floor is yours. Tom, you are muted.
I'll bet you warned us about that.
There we go.
A couple of weeks ago, about 8,000 of us were at the ASU GSV conference, and I heard Dr. Tim Knowles, the president of the Carnegie Foundation, talk about the big global shift that's going on from time to learning. And he said we're going to move seat time and courses into the background by getting better at describing our learning goals, sort of naming competencies, at creating learning experiences around those competencies, and then creating new signaling systems that credential those, that make them portable in talent transactions. And it struck me that one of the best examples of this new learning system, this new infrastructure, is in teacher micro-credentials for professional learning. And one of the best examples of teacher development using micro-credentials is the partnership of states developed and sponsored by digiLEARN. And we're here to celebrate that today. I'm really excited about the work that the 4 states are doing and the fact that they really scaled and demonstrated the efficacy of this teacher development system. And it's really one of the best examples of a distributed credentialing system. And it's the only way you can distribute a credentialing system is by having common quality standards. And we're here today really to celebrate and discuss those standards. We're going to start. We have a terrific panel, and I'll introduce Governor Perdue in a minute, but we're also joined by Bobette Ray, a leader in teacher credentialing in Arkansas, also Michelle Miles, and from Learning Forward, and Dr. Frank McKay at RTI International. Welcome to all of you. Governor Perdue, it is so great to see you. I want to start by thanking you for your 25 years of public leadership in North Carolina and almost a decade since then at digiLEARN, where you've allowed me to tag along. Governor Perdue, three big questions. Why micro-credentials for teacher development? Why a partnership of states, and why was a system of quality assurance important?
Tom, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for being the host today, the moderator, and for all the support and leadership you've given me personally. I thank you, and digiLEARN. I was not at ASU GSV, so I'm not at all surprised that you all were talking about an implosion of how we currently do things with the Carnegie unit to the future. It's going to be tough to get there. Let me remind you of all 50 states using that old model and all the money and the power that's behind that system. So we have a long way to go, but at least we are having the conversation finally. And I thank you for that leadership. And to the people who are on the panel, y'all are all rock stars. I'm really tickled that today is here and that we're releasing the quality assurance standards and the rubric. So especially to Myra Best, who's led the work for years, we thank you. It was digiLEARN's partnership with you, Tom, in Getting Smart and developing the Digital Scholars Initiative that first got us all working around the micro-credentials. So unlike the seat time, you've heard it from Tom, or the continuing education unit that teachers use now, micro-credentials provide a way to recognize an educator's demonstration of skills. We've seen this in the workforce forever. You all know the big companies that have done it and how cool it is and how fast it is and how personalized it is, all the things that make learning at a post-college age positive and easy and really functional. So I can remain employed, be a mid-career employee, and in small increments become a Tom Vander Ark. I mean, that's the goal. You have to work your way through it. So they can offer also a stack of credentials. And that's why I was so intrigued. You can move anywhere in the country or the world, and you have this stack that may lead to a degree or a license, but that certifies you to move if you are forced or want to do that. So the partnership of states has established, I hope, and I think, and I believe, we're anxious to see it adopted throughout the country, consistent quality standards to guide the development of and implementation of micro-credentials. I need to give a shout out to those partner states, Arkansas, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Wyoming, as well as RTI. Thank God you're located in North Carolina. You have been a stellar group for us. And all of the national advisors that are on the video today, thank you. You've given tirelessly of your time and your energy, your advice over 3 years to reach this milestone. And Myra, it is a milestone, the micro-credential quality assurance standards and the self-assessment rubric, which is based on research and professional learning standards. What does this mean for states? Tom asked me 2 or 3 pieces of a question. First, the standards and the rubric, according to me, according to my reading of them, are really an important tool for states and districts and developers so that they can ensure that micro-credentials are using or developing tools that meet some kind of specified and signed off standard of quality and information that's informed by research. That's a biggie, y'all. Secondly, the standards and the rubric gives us a foundation for the research that we need to continue to use micro-credentials to improve teacher practice. And ultimately, that's student learning. That's the whole goal of any kind of teaching and learning environment. States need the data, I think, especially for teacher certification and licensure. It's high stakes. It's about student success and career advancement. And if indeed we are to change the system, you got to start here and slowly prove that what you're doing offers a viable and perhaps a better, if we can use that word in 2024, a better system for teachers all over the world to progress at their own rate using micro-credentials. We also recognize, and this is a toughie because I swore to my, I was through with it all after today, and you all have been so wonderful putting up with us for 3 years. We do recognize and whisper that the work isn't finished. We need other states and others around the country to use the tools so the rubric can become embedded in the educational system. So we will really have an education industry standard, one that policymakers and others can use to identify that micro-credentials, yeah, they do make a difference in teacher practice and ultimate student learning, as that what really matters. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Governor Perdue. Babette Ray, why were teacher micro-credentials important to your state of Arkansas, and why this partnership with other states?
Well, I think as Governor Perdue mentioned, we're very ingrained in that old system of professional development. So I think Arkansas saw micro-credentials as an opportunity for teachers to move out of that standard model and really start to demonstrate job-embedded competencies. It's one thing to show on paper that you can do something, but it's a different thing to be able to go in a classroom and demonstrate that skill with your students and produce artifacts and evidence that an assessor will deem meets that standard. Governor Perdue also mentioned providing a better viable system. And so I think Arkansas really sees micro-credentials as a better way, but change is slow. We're very tied to that old model. So it's thinking about how we can move forward. It's going to require collecting a lot of data to prove that it's a better system. So I think that's a very key consideration for states as they start to embark on this journey. And then I think another thing that Governor Perdue mentioned is that the work isn't finished. Along those lines of collecting data, we need to show that micro-credentials create more efficacy in teacher performance. Because if not, then we just have a feel-good, anecdotal, this is what we think. So really focusing on how we can continue to collect that data and show that teachers who earn micro-credentials are better prepared and increase student achievement more than the old model.
Thank you, Babette. Dr. Frank McKay at RTI, you've been observing the growth and use of teacher micro-credentials. Is it possible to have a distributed system done at quality and at scale? Are these quality standards working, and are you confident that we really can have a distributed system of teacher micro-credentialing with quality at scale?
Short answer and long answer. Yes, we can get there. As Governor Perdue mentioned, it's still a work in progress. I think the significance of this work, and RTI has really appreciated the opportunity to be part of helping to facilitate the process. The real value here is having some agreement around what it means, what quality micro-credentials look like, and how we define that quality, and how we can assess that quality, and creating tools to do that. Are we there yet? Absolutely not. I will say what we've learned through the process of developing the quality standards and now the rubric, and I'll say we spent a year developing those quality standards that were published in 2023, and now we have the rubric that we took about 6 months to develop. One evidence of impact of that is we've had the 4 states in the micro-credential partnership of states involved. We've also had national advisors, including Michelle Miles from Learning Forward, and national advisors from Bloom Board and Digital Promise, NEA, national boards, and New America. So having all of the different, or many of the different perspectives of national advisors and experts from the classroom level up to the State Department level involved in the development of the standards in the rubric means that we've wrestled with a lot of the questions around what does quality look like, and what does quality look like in different formats of micro-credentials. So the question about distributed and scaling of the quality, I think we've created a tool that is an important step towards getting there. And another significant part of creating the standards is that it's addressing a key policy barrier around from state to state using micro-credentials in licensure and professional development, and recognizing that that we need the policy now to advance forward if we're going to get to the scale that you're referring to.
Frank, I guess I want to remind our listeners that the alternative to a distributed system that gives teachers voice and choice, and the ability to pick what they're going to learn and how they're going to demonstrate that against a shared quality standard. The alternative to that is standardized learning and standardized assessments, right? So it's really important that we get this right to maintain the key ingredients of a micro-credential system, that it allows personalized learning for teachers, and with performance assessments rather than using a centralized, standardized assessment.
Absolutely, and really, we're talking about this shift from the system we're in now to a competency-based system, and you opened the conversation with that. I think it's so important to remember that we're not talking about micro-credentials in isolation, and this has been part of the vision of the Micro-Credential Partnership of States from day one, is to envision a different system that micro-credentials are a really important part of, but micro-credentials themselves are not that system. The system is one that provides, as you're saying, additional choice, autonomy, flexibility, and really targeted professional learning for teachers that really improves practice. And the way I think of it is, we talk all the time about we need to recognize teachers as the professionals they are. There's a cultural piece to that, but there's also a systems piece to that. And this shift to a competency-based system is really having a system that recognizes teachers as highly qualified professionals, and it also treats them that way, because by providing personalization, autonomy, and flexibility, that in itself is a system that treats teachers and educators as professionals. So it's a very important point.
Michelle Miles, Learning Forward is really the expert in professional learning. So I want your expert opinion on teacher micro-credentials. Are you excited about their potential? And if so, are they going to grow in teacher development? And do they have any implications for how we think about teacher preparation?
I think absolutely. There's so much potential micro-credentials. And like Frank was saying, as long as we don't ever view micro-credentials as the solution. And as long as we thoughtfully and using the quality assurance standards and the rubric with great intention, embed micro-credentials in a high quality, highly effective professional learning system, then I think that we will get much closer to seeing the promise of micro-credentials that we are all talking about here today and so excited about. And so some of the implications for micro-credentials when it comes to licensure and prep programs is that micro-credentials are going to help, as we've been saying, help us move away from that rigid time-bound measurement of CEUs that we're currently using, when all we know right now, and one of my favorite things to say to a group of people when I'm talking about micro-credentials is that in the absence of micro-credentials, with the CEU model that we have been using for so long, all we know with that model is that an educator showed up and signed in, pretty much. So there's very, very little assessment, very, very little evaluation of that professional learning and the learning that the educator is walking away with. Well, micro-credentials being competency-based are so different, provide such a different opportunity and such a different landscape that they really are going to help us create an environment that is more agile, I think, and more responsive to district and system needs. And that goes for prep programs as well.
Governor Perdue, is the battle over now that we have shared quality standards? What was challenging about getting to this point, and what can you share with us about the path forward with quality standards?
Tom, I'm very optimistic about how these standards, and especially this rubric and the data that both of the other panelists have, all three of the other panelists have said is critical to the outcome long-term of micro-credentials. The work of this group is nearly done. I'm so proud of it, and I have great hopes that this can change the fundamental licensure system in the country. What I'm saying is not easy or simple. You all know how direct I am. What we are doing and what y'all have been a marvelous part of, and what Myra has led, is challenge the concept of seat time, the thing that we've done forever, the old Carnegie unit, and the way kids are stuck in a system that works for the clock, not the learning. So this seat time would be replaced by a different kind of licensure for funding. States have a tool, finally, that's recognized and that's held with esteem in 4 states. And I'm hopeful that the other states will fairly quickly join. But there will be a way now, a lever, to restructure accountability systems. This is a biggie for teacher licensure, for students to focus on learning and outcomes. The same thing you said that was said in wherever you all were, ASU GSV. So it's all focused on outcomes and skills acquisition rather than seat time to become better prepared teachers and students. This also means that the business models, education business models that support innovation and demonstration of skills or outcomes rather than standardization based on time. That's a huge shift. That's a huge shift. So I am not underestimating the work that's ahead. What you're fundamentally doing is suggesting that an education system that is so standardized, as we all know, to a different one that is based on outcomes. It's a long march. I'm not teasing anybody. It's a long march. But I believe that you're going to see it happen. And I believe it will happen because of all of you all and all of you on the call and the leadership you'll provide nationally. Thank you, Tom, for your work, and for all of the people who've spoken. Thank you. I admire you greatly.
Babette, how widely used are teacher micro credentials in professional learning in Arkansas today? And do you see that growing, particularly with the addition of these quality standards?
We do. We started out, micro-credentials were new. There wasn't a common understanding or definition. So that was one reason Arkansas was so drawn to this work. I saw it as a great opportunity for us to learn and then participate in something that other states could use. So we started very small with our development of micro-credentials. We still rely on outside providers as well, but I think we've seen it grow. I mentioned data and that it's so important to think about how you're going to collect data as you implement micro-credentials. And one of the things that in looking, we're kind of at the end of a term for micro-credentials. So people are making their final submissions. And so I'm starting to look at data, and we're not asking the question of how many years of experience do you have? And I think that's really key in finding the group of educators that will benefit the most from micro-credentials. I think North Carolina delved into that a little bit and determined maybe they were better suited for veteran teachers. So we're going to add that to our exit surveys to see, how would this best be used in teacher preparation programs with novice educators, or is it those teachers who've really hit their stride and are ready to dig in and demonstrate? Right now, we have a really high enrollment rate in micro-credentials, and then a very small percentage that actually earn the micro-credential. So, we're really trying to determine what the cause is for that.
That's interesting. You mentioned prep institutions. Have they started to pay any attention to this movement and incorporate it in any way into preparation?
I think they have. I think it depends on universities in different states. I had an email a few weeks ago, and someone came in by reciprocity, and I think it was maybe the University of Missouri, and he was asking, he had completed some micro-credentials in his educator preparation program, and I didn't really understand if they had applied to a credit that was on his transcript or if they were listed separately. And I never heard back with an answer to that. But yeah, so I think that, and I think there is a lot of interest because, again, we want day one ready teachers. So what are they able to walk in the classroom and demonstrate? But I think that's going to come with a lot of support from either the educator preparation program or mentor teachers and coaches within the school if we start asking novice teachers or aspiring teachers to complete micro-credentials.
Babette, are Arkansas school superintendents on board with micro-credentials?
As far as I know, they are. There's always that carrot. Teachers want to know what will I get from this. So we have offered stipends. Surprisingly, and to me, it's a pretty good stipend. I think $400 a micro-credential. But it's not really the money that is the motivator. It's more about time. We did some focus groups as we began this work, and what we heard from educators was that time is that precious commodity that none of us have enough of. So could I get some flex days where I don't have to go to those sit and get PDs if I complete a certain number of micro-credentials?
Michelle, where do we go from here? How do you think about the growth of teacher micro-credentials, but within the 4 states that are partners and then more broadly to other states?
Tom, thank you for the great question. And I just want to just recognize Governor Perdue's flag to us that it's not going to be easy. So we should prepare to stick to micro-credentials for the long haul, because I think there is so much promise and so much potential in the realm of micro-credentials. So, but in terms of where we go from here, Tom, we would certainly I think, continue just to reiterate that if micro-credentials are embedded in a comprehensive professional learning system, then I think that is not the next step and also the way forward. Like Babette is saying, there's initial interest. We've been seeing this for years. There's initial interest in the micro-credential, and a comprehensive professional learning system would tell us that that interest needs to be supported. There need to be resources put behind it so they can truly meet the definition of high quality professional learning: ongoing, job embedded, sustained over time, classroom focused, data driven, right? Micro-credentials contain all of that great DNA within them, but outside of a system with intentional structures and supports, I think we will struggle to see them make traction. However, inside a system with those proper supports, I think that we will that we will see the promise that they have, not only for educators, but also that impact that micro-credentials can have on students. So I think embedding micro-credentials in a well-designed, comprehensive professional learning system is the way forward, Tom.
I would just add, you asked about superintendents. Arkansas is revising our professional development rules, and I think a lot of that is going to focus on teachers having an individualized professional growth plan. So rather than a one-size-fits-all PD for all of the staff, really looking at how teachers can support their own professional growth goal. And I think that's going to be accomplished through micro-credentials, but just because it makes the most sense. If you have a large staff, how will you possibly meet all their needs unless you allow them to go forth and pick something? So again, I think that speaks to the quality assurance standards, because we want to make sure that we're offering high quality professional development opportunities to educators.
Thank you, Babette. I appreciate that. Maybe goal number one is to help every teacher have a personalized growth plan. But as Governor Perdue said, we're also trying to make evidence of that growth portable so that it goes with them wherever a teacher goes within that state and even across states. And that means a credible credentialing system with credentials that travel and are widely recognized. And so I just want to underscore that we're trying to do something that's quite difficult, because most scaled credentialing systems rely on these standardized assessments that are the same everywhere, but they're usually just not very good. They don't do a great job of measuring the skills that are most important. And what these states have demonstrated is that you can build a decentralized system where teachers have the ability to demonstrate important skills in ways that are authentic to them and their practice and their context, but do it in a way with consistent quality so that we can credential that and that it becomes a recognized, trusted, portable credential. Frank, can we pull this off and actually do this nationally, where we have this system of common standards and decentralized demonstrations of capability?
Again, I think yes, and we've got to get the policy there to make it happen. The quality assurance standards are a key step forward in getting there. I think one thing that's been really encouraging to me, that through this process of piloting the rubric, just in the midst of going through cycles of piloting, we recruited over 35 experts across the 4 states and the country to pilot the rubric, and immediately we heard those reviewers of the rubric saying, "Oh, I'm already using this. It's in development, but I'm already using this to think about how we do micro-credentials in our state, in our organization, and what we need to do to improve these, so that when this rubric is published, that we're in step with it." And so to me, that speaks to the power of bringing states together to create a tool like this. And again, we need policy that's going to help us move it forward. But I think the collaborative effort to develop this tool and bringing the different perspectives from teachers to principals to professional development experts, it's just really been a powerful process, and it's created a really important tool that's going to move us forward.
Governor Perdue, this issue of credentialing seems to be growing in interest, not just for teachers, but in the workforce, and maybe it will make its way into high schools in the second half of this decade. Are you bullish on the issue of credentialing? Do you see governors and state chiefs paying attention to credentialing systems, not only for teachers, but for learners?
Tom, I talk to governors more than state education leaders, but as you listen to the conversations from both groups, you begin to feel a sense of hope and innovation because they themselves understand something's not working. The school choice, the voucher, the movement to alternative to the traditional public school system has to drive some of the discussions that we've all had around our quote kitchen tables about what we can do to make things better for kids, because they're the true receivers. So I think, yes, I think that the governors are on point about their interest and their awareness that education is nothing but economic development. And I think the state school chiefs understand that for them to produce a graduate that a state can look up to and feel comfortable about, something's got to change, or else the kids are going to leave the system. And the kids then without will be the ones left holding the bag. So all of that, sometimes change is ugly. And sometimes a system like we're trying to force only happens over years. And the challenge for us is to stay true to what we know will work and to bring people along as we get out there and talk about it.
Governor Perdue, I'm working in my my hobby horse issue here, which is I want more high school kids doing work that matters. Big, complicated projects assessed with real performance assessments. And I guess one of the reasons I'm super excited about teacher micro-credentialing is that I think it models a beautiful learning cycle of framing up a project, a growth experience, and then assessing that and inviting others to assess that using commonly respected rubrics in real demonstrations of learning. And Michelle, do you buy that this teachers growing in this way sort of models an important growth cycle that could benefit learners as we move to more credentialed learning, more performance assessment for young people?
Tom, I have it in my cart and I am about to check out. So that is how much I'm buying it. As a matter of fact, in Tennessee, that actually is how we got to educator micro-credentials because of the conversation around competency-based learning for students. And so the idea with Dr. Candace McQueen at the time was that if we have any hope of doing competency-based learning for students well, as you said, tackling these big, messy, really meaningful, relevant projects with students, then teachers need to have an idea of what that looks like, what it feels like, what the challenges are. And so we made our way to educator micro-credentials. And of course, here we are still trying to get that right. But I absolutely believe that is, well, I know that is reflective of this dual dance that we want, that competency-based experience for both educators and students.
Bobette, you have some examples in the workforce space in Arkansas of credentialed learning and learners with a learner record, a portable learner record. And so it feels like we're seeing some movement in this direction in the workforce space.
Yeah, I think that, you know, especially with the teacher shortage, I don't think Arkansas is alone, that we have a crisis in certified teachers in the classroom. So one of the things we're looking at is that grow your own model. Every person doesn't have the advantage to take 4 years and not work and go to a traditional university and have an educator preparation experience. So we are offering a lot of CTE courses designed for aspiring teachers. So they start in high school earning those, and they can graduate with a certified teaching assistant certificate. And so Educator Rising is a national company that offers micro-credentials for aspiring teachers in high school. So yeah, I think we are seeing that. Arkansas is also one of the first states to get Department of Labor funding for a registered apprenticeship in education. So that's kind of in its nascent stages in our state, but the funding is there. And so again, the communication and getting superintendents aware of this is what you can do to grow your own teachers.
Frank, now that we have these quality assurance standards, are we done? Are these going to be dynamic? And if so, how can educators and policymakers contribute to, you know, dynamic quality standards that keep getting better and stay relevant to the challenge?
Great question. And my answer would be that the quality standards in the rubric will need to evolve as micro-credentials evolve and the needs that micro-credentials are designed to meet evolve. I think we all know that no set of standards are static, that they have to be examined and updated over time. And I will say, we published digiLEARN published the quality standards for micro-credentials a year ago. And just through the process of piloting the rubric, we've already made revisions to the standards based on feedback and the testing of the rubric. So my prediction will be, we know we need more research on micro-credentials. We need more research on this rubric itself. And as we do that research and implement, we will learn new things that will cause us to continue to evolve and make it even stronger.
Governor Perdue, do you want to add anything to that about where we go from here with quality standards?
I think it's an evolving concept. I don't believe anything is perfect when it's released, Tom, and I see this as a fluid animal. Of course, it's going to grow and change, and it's going to be up to us and the teachers and the providers across the country to figure out what needs to be added or deleted from what we're going to present. Tomorrow, there'll be a press release on the micro-credentials and the quality assurance standards and rubric. That's a start. That's the first public announcement of where we could be headed as a country. And then I continue to believe that every state has to do it their own way. I don't see any kind of nationalized plan on every state's going to have these 14,000 micro-credentials. I think it has to be unique to the state and perhaps even unique to the system. I'm not sure how low we want to go in terms of having thousands of them out there. So I do think that's going to have some oversight. But sure, all things change. And thank God we're in an era, Tom, of innovation. When you were talking about your goal to do the apprenticeships, to do the projects, to do the big master work of a senior year, or whatever year it is that kids decide or people decide to leave the K through 12 system, I really do think that one of the fundamental goals should be, and I'm sure it is for you, that we're also embedding in the brains and the hearts of our students this ability, this need, this passion to take a risk and not be afraid that this one master project fails. We've all got to learn, and our kids have to be taught that it's okay to try and it's okay to fail, because then you pick yourself up and you go to the next one. And because you've got the spirit, you're golden.
I love that, Governor Perdue. You're underscoring, I guess, one of one of our big priorities at Getting Smart is promoting entrepreneurship and an entrepreneurial mindset, not only in students, but in teachers. So I really appreciate that. I do think micro-credentials sort of lend themselves to inviting teachers to co-author their path forward. So I appreciate that. And this is, Governor, for you, because you spent a lot of time thinking about large-scale assessment. The questions about sort of link between teacher micro-credentials and standards, quality standards thereof, and student assessment. Is there any way that these are related? Should observed teacher growth have anything to do with observed student growth? And do you see these systems of growth measures having any connection in the future?
I think they all should have a connection, but I don't think they should be linked to performance or pay. I think that's where we lost people in our fight to open up the system and to allow people to have progressive project-based learning and modeling and teaching.
Yeah.
Once you tie a salary and a salary increase to what your kids do, there's real trouble, Tom. This whole system is going to have to be rethought. I'm too old to do it, but I really want to ride the coattails of all of you all who are going to make it happen.
Michelle, do you have thoughts on that? How should observed teacher growth be linked to observed student growth?
Tom, there is research, particularly AIR did research for Learning Forward that showed significance in the percentage that demonstrated connections between educator growth and student outcomes. But they're very hard to get at. The types of research that needs to be done in order for those to be counted as valid and credible costs a lot of money, not to mention a lot of time. But we know that there is a connection, as Governor Perdue said. And so I think, anytime we can improve educator practice, we can help educators grow in their knowledge, attitudes, skills, aspirations, and behaviors, like Joelle and Killian talks about the CASABs, then we're making progress and we're doing our best to improve outcomes for students. And so I think that, whether or not connections are made, we know that if we improve teachers in the classrooms, leaders in schools, then we're working to improve outcomes for students. And I think that, in a way, should be enough, as intermediary steps. So.
This a question for you and Frank on designing new micro-credentials. Can we have quality standards that are in place for a long time, and have enough flexibility that we can very quickly create new micro-credentials around new priorities? An example would be, I don't know, in January, I thought to myself, wow, we should make sure in the spring of this year that we make it a real priority to encourage AI literacy among our teachers and students. And we saw some folks create micro-credentials around that as a new professional growth priority. Can we have common quality standards that last for a while and a system that's dynamic to spin up new skill areas quickly and stay relevant? Can you do both of those things?
We sure hope so, and we've done our best to design these quality standards and the rubric to make that possible. Even now, we had a lot of conversations with the Partnership of States and national advisors about how specific do we get with these quality standards so that we can still allow flexibility. And through wrestling with some of those questions, I feel like we've landed in a place with the rubric now and the quality standards now that does work to a large extent to allow that. We talked a lot about what are the commonalities that need to be true across any micro-credential, whether it's for a kindergarten teacher or a high school principal. What are the common and essential characteristics of a high-quality micro-credential? And I think by asking those broader questions and designing the quality standards to apply across and be flexible across different types of micro-credentials, that allows space for that innovation that you're talking about, because they're, at the end of the day, however innovative those micro-credentials are, they still need to be high quality, and that's what we've tried to capture with all of these different perspectives and voices in the conversation.
Michelle, you agree with that?
I do. I think the beauty of the quality assurance standards is that they provide a framework that is content agnostic. And so, regardless of whether a micro-credential is, centered on AI or any other cutting innovation, like Frank just said, there are certain characteristics, that framework, that make a micro-credential quality or not. And I think that really shows through in the standards and the rubric.
Babette, as the development of the quality standards, do you see that standardizing the micro-credential offerings in Arkansas? Are yours going to become more and more similar to what are offered in North and South Carolina and Wyoming? Is this going to result in more standardization, and is that a good thing? Where do you see?
I think that there'll be, I don't know if standardized is the word I would use, but I think there will be consistency
Consistent
in
quality?
quality. And then I think that educators will be able to recognize what the characteristics that make a micro-credential high quality. Is that competency clearly defined? Is the criteria for earning the micro-credential clearly laid out, so that I, as an earner, feel confident when I submit that that the assessor will measure all of my artifacts against the rubric. So those types of things that we've identified as being key to quality micro-credentials, I think the standards will allow states to provide similar experiences for teachers, but yet maintain that flexibility to meet their own needs as a state.
Do you think with quality standards in place, do you think we'll see more common credentials nationwide? I just use, Gen AI literacy as an example. Do you think we'll see a single Gen AI literacy credential being shared by multiple states?
I don't know. I would hope so. Micro-credentials, to develop them well, it takes a lot of time and energy and effort. You have to have someone who is an expert in AI literacy, for example, and then also understands that the adult learning theory that we have applied to micro-credentials. So you can't just snap your fingers and put one together. So it would be nice if we could share them across state lines, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. States have a lot of the same concerns around literacy, the science of reading, social emotional learning for students. So a lot of things that we could all, I think, join forces and really create some outstanding professional learning for teachers.
Well, this is an exciting day, and Babette, I appreciate your leadership in Arkansas, along with your colleagues in North Carolina, South Carolina, Wyoming. This is such an important milestone to have achieved the scale that you have in the use of teacher micro-credentials, and to have a shared system of quality assurance. I think it's very exciting, not only for the teaching profession, but I think we're part of demonstrating at scale that credentialing systems are a new way to guide and shape human development, and to begin moving time and courses into the background, and to move learning into the foreground, as Michelle described. Governor Perdue, when are people going to learn more about this this week?
I hope so, Tom. The release will be made public tomorrow, and there'll be contact information for more information. But I don't believe the work of the states, the partnership of the states, is completed. I think this will also be an evolving system where input and feedback are essential. But it is the beginning. It's the beginning of change, and I think we've all been a part of that. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Myra again. Myra Best, as the executive director, has led this. She's done a lot of the thinking and the work with the wonderful 4 states, and all of the advisors and all of you who've been participating in the work. I think we can say today's been a good day, and that the job is not complete, but that we have the opportunity to see learning and teaching change slowly but correctly, using the opportunity of standards and qualities and performance.
Thank you, Gunnar. Thanks, Frank. Thank you, Melissa and or Michelle. Jalil, thanks for hosting us today.
Thank you so much. And to our panelists, thank you for engaging in such a robust and intentional and timely conversation. Before we close today, I do want to encourage you all to join us for our other Hunt Institute webinars, which you can find on our website. And you can, because we'll be having lots of discussions similar to this. So again, thank you for joining us today. And I think Rebel has, or someone has dropped the link in the chat. We look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.